Welcome to the Finding Grace in the Wilderness podcast. I'm your host, Sharon Hawkins. Here each week, we will share stories about how God's grace can be found during life's most difficult circumstances. Meet with me around the table as we chat about God's never-ending faithfulness. We will share truth and life and discuss faith, fears, struggles, and victories. Join us as we seek to grow deeper in relationship with Jesus, the one who makes a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of, or at least that's what they told us when we were little girls. But did we really believe it? I think we did, as we skipped along in our frilly little dresses thinking we were the center of the universe. It couldn't be further from the truth, though. Genesis 2:7 says, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." You know how the story goes. He took a rib from Adam and made Eve. So technically, that rib was made of dirt. So us girls, we come from dirt too. When God created us, He didn't need a lot of stuff. After all, He is God. He just took some dirt, something He had already made and had laying around, and He turned it into man. Then from man He made woman. In Ecclesiastes 3:20, the Bible says, "All go to the same place, all come from dust, and to dust all return." The Bible says that the Lord is the potter and we are the clay. I think this is very fitting since we came from the dirt. I did a little research, and the best clay comes from the swamp, and it's full of mire and muck and imperfections. That sounds about right, doesn't it? The potter takes the clay and he pounds it and he molds it and he bends it and he moves it. He has a plan to make each one of us uniquely. He knows us. The potter knows the clay. While He is molding us, this would be one of those good times for us to be still and know that He is God. And I can just hear Psalm 139:23 through 24 as a passage that we should convey to our potter during this time. "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." That's the time for Him to get those imperfections out, toss those little pebbles aside, get rid of that mire and muck, and make us into a work of art. But we have to be still. We have to be malleable. We have to be flexible. It's the clay's job to be humble and let the potter work with us as He will. "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." These are words to live by for today's busy woman. Often we have way too much to do. Often we get bent out of shape. Sometimes we wonder, what is the purpose in all this crazy busyness? Our lives seem to be defined by all that we can do rather than by who we are. We long to just be, to be happy, to be still, to be a woman, fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of our Creator. Who are we? What is our calling? What is our purpose? How can we discover what our special purpose is? Only the one, the potter, who lovingly created us, truly knows why He did. James 4:10 says, "Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up." I can just see the potter's hands as he crafts the clay and lifts it up as it rises into a beautiful water pitcher or vase. Only the potter knows what he's creating. Romans 9:21 says, "Does not the potter have the right to make out of the same lump of clay some pottery for noble purposes and some for common use?" Today's busy woman may or may not feel that she's been called to what she considers noble purpose. But what is noble purpose anyway? No task is small or unimportant if Christ has called you to it. You know what they say, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. He has things planned that we have no clue about. A fine porcelain plate is useful, but so is a porcelain toilet. Only by being flexible can we become the woman, the masterpiece, the vessel that God has planned for us to be, the one designed for our good, for His glory. Sometimes it's painful, as the potter molds us and pounds us and makes us the way He wants us to be. Jeremiah 18:1-4 says, "This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Go down to the potter's house, and there I will give you a message." So I went down to the potter's house, and I saw him working at the wheel, but the pot he was shaping from the clay was marred in his hands. So the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as it seemed best to him. This is just what God does with us sometimes. He isn't pleased, so He changes the vessel for His good pleasure. So many times in life, it feels like He's starting all over, pounding us again with that mallet, molding us deeply with His hands, working to make us into a vessel for His good pleasure. Once He's finished forming the clay, that's not the end. The next step is sticking it into the fire. An anonymous quote says, "A clay pot sitting in the sun will always be just a clay pot. It has to go through the white heat of the furnace to become porcelain." I equate going into the fire as going into trials many times. Things that we go through can leave us vulnerable to the emotion of despair. It can paralyze and debilitate even the strongest of souls. I know you understand about despair. Pressures from every side can be perplexing. Persecution can make us feel as though we've been struck down. When life is filled with despair, we must not give up. Instead, we can turn to God, our loving Father, and His powerful Word to regain focus. And just in the nick of time, He pulls us out of the fire and takes another look at us to see if we're ready for His good pleasure. You see, we continue to be a work in progress. As His children, as long as we're alive on this earth, He will continue to try to make us more like Jesus. We will never reach that level, but it won't stop Him from trying to make us more like Him. This is because He loves us too much to leave us as we are. After that firing process, there's another process once the glazing has been added. One more time back into the fire. You know what they say, sometimes less is more. Perhaps it takes the most strength, but it always benefits us the most to just do nothing but be. Be still and know that He is God. Be a lump of clay in the potter's hands. After all, we're believers, not do-leavers. He understands all about suffering. When we're in the fire, we're suffering too. 2 Timothy 2:11-12 says, "Here is a statement you can trust. If we have died with Him, we will also live with Him. If we persevere, we will also rule with Him." Man is the clay. He is human. He is fragile. He is impacted by the sin that entered our world back in the Garden of Eden. What makes him special is that he is created and loved by God, the great potter. Once the potter has completed his work of art, we are still an empty vessel. Our usefulness only comes when we're filled. In 2 Corinthians 4, we read about a treasure. The treasure is kept in a jar of clay. That seems like an odd place for a treasure. Usually we would keep our valuable treasures in a vault, in a safety deposit box, or in a strong protected place. A jar of clay is fragile and easily broken. The potter created us in His image, but these flaws, chips, and cracks have formed as we've lived our lives. in a fallen world. This jar of clay referred to in 2 Corinthians is not of great worth or monetary value, but rather a common, ordinary vessel, much like the clay jars of Bible days that were used for water or trash. We are that earthen vessel, that fragile clay pot. Our bodies, our outward appearance, our essential humanity, our physical disabilities, our shattered dreams, these are all elements of our jar of clay. None of these things can bring meaning or a sense of value to our lives. If we focus on our human side, despair is bound to set in. But the wonderful secret of overcoming despair is also revealed in these verses in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Kept inside that broken, fragile, ordinary jar of clay is a treasure, a priceless treasure of immeasurable worth. 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 12 and 16 through 18 says, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body. So then death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. Therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Let God's truth refocus your eyes today on the treasure that dwells within you. This treasure can fill the emptiest of vessels. After all, a jar is designed to hold something. That treasure is God himself living within us, bringing his abundant life. The same power that raised Jesus from the grave lives in us. In our own humanity, we have no sense of wealth or worth, no value in this jar of clay. We are simply an empty jar. But when this humanity is filled with deity, we receive what we were created to hold, the very life of God. He is our treasure. He is what makes the jar valuable. When we look only at the frail clay pot, despair is the natural result. But when we look at the glorious treasure we hold, we are inwardly renewed day by day. And those frailties and cracks in our clay pot, they are not to be despised, for they now serve a purpose. They allow the life of God, our cherished treasure, to seep out for all those around us to see. A water bearer in India had 2 large pots, each hung on an end of a pole which he carried across his neck. One of the pots had a crack in it, and while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water at the end of the long walk from the stream to the master's house, the cracked pot arrived only half full. For a full 2 years this went on daily, with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pots of full water to his master's house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, perfect to the end for which it was made. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was able to accomplish only half of what it had been made to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be a bitter failure, it spoke to the water bearer one day by the stream. "I'm ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." "Why?" asked the bearer. "What are you ashamed of?" "I have been able for these past 2 years to deliver only half my load because this crack in my side causes water to leak out all the way back to your master's house. Because of my flaws, you have to do all of this work and you don't get full value from your efforts, the pot said. The water bearer felt sorry for the old crackpot, and in his compassion he said, "As we return to the master's house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the path." Indeed, as they went up the hill, the old crackpot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wildflowers on the side of the path, and this cheered it some. But at the end of the trail, it still felt bad because it had leaked out half its load, and so again the pot apologized to the bearer for its failure. The bearer said to the pot, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you've watered them. For 2 years I've been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate my master's table. Without you being just the way you are, he would not have this beauty to grace his house. Each of us has our own unique flaws. We are all crackpots, aren't we? But if we only allow it, the Lord will use our flaws to grace his table. In God's great economy, nothing goes to waste. So don't be afraid of your flaws. Acknowledge them, and you too can be the cause of beauty. Know that in your weakness his strength is made perfect. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." And the struggles we endure? Well, some jostling helps to spread the life-giving water out of our clay pot to those around us, just when they need it. Only the Lord, the great potter, could create such a vessel that could be used in such a way. He makes a difference in the creation, and he makes a difference in the usage if we will only surrender to him. He knows just what he's doing when he creates us. He knows just what our purpose is. A favorite old hymn is called "Have Thine Own Way, Lord." Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, as in thy presence humbly I bow. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold over my being absolute sway, filled with thy Spirit, till all can see Christ only always living in me. Surrender to him today. You couldn't be in better hands than the potter who lovingly made you for his purposes, who refines you through the fires of trials and troubles, who even in our brokenness can use us for his purposes. Matthew 22, beginning with verse 36, says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." Love and humble yourself before the potter, and he will help you love others. Let's strive to be as faithful in the work he's called us to do as he is faithful to us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Grace in the Wilderness. Please like and subscribe to support the growth of the ministry and so you don't miss a single episode. Check out SharonHawkins.net for show notes or to contact me about speaking engagements or find out more information about how to support Grace in the Wilderness Ministries. May God lead you safely through your wilderness as you trust Him, and may His river of grace always flood your desert times. He is doing a new thing. Let's not miss it. See you here next week.